Good afternoon, everybody. You can see behind us, we have a really sunny day in Dallas. We're here in Bedford, Texas, on the set for Fishbowl Radio Network. This is Fingerprints of Greif. I'm Kim Francis, and I'm going to be introducing a really powerful guest today that I'm really excited, who is also 3 or 4 shows into Fishbowl, new show. And so I'm just going to introduce you, and then we'll talk a little bit. So Alan Heide has a podcast here at 7 p.m. Central every Friday. So you have an hour after ours, right? So we get done at 6. And we're going to talk to Alan about Breaking the Cycle, his podcast. But one of the things that I think we can all say today, there's 2 really tragic events today. And for those of you that were following the Ryan Stein case, the 19-year-old out of Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
They found him dead today in the river. And I was really, really sad. And here's what bothers me about it, you guys, is that he only had 1 drink at Luke Bryan's bar in Nashville. He was there with his fraternity brothers. He was on a trip. He was texting his girlfriend and his parents. He was a very happy kid. My mom worked for the county attorney for 27 years. I know several police officers, and I had a conversation with one today. They think that his drink got drugged.
Oh, man.
Because when you saw him coming out of the bar, he was stumbling, almost falling over himself. And he got kicked out of the bar after 1 drink. So something happened, and they think he was drugged. Now, here's what bothers me, and we're going to talk to Alan about this in a minute. He's a white 19-year-old, okay? And you've got white and black cops. There's good cops, bad cops of every race, every creed, doesn't matter. But what was fascinating to me in this age of mental health, which we're talking about with you, is that when you see a kid and you know that you're on a Saturday night on Nashville, on that street, bar after bar after bar, drinking after drinking after drinking, and he gets 1 drink, he gets kicked out of the bar, and you literally see the video of him stumbling like he's almost going to fall over and hit his head on the concrete. And he keeps walking, and then you see a police officer who stops and talks to him, Alan.
Yeah.
He's not in his right mind at that moment.
Yeah.
So why didn't that officer, in the day that we're in, this guy is messed up, I don't know on what, maybe he's autistic, maybe he's got a brain injury, maybe he's an injured vet. Something is wrong. So why didn't that police officer say, hey, man, he just let him go?
Yeah.
And then you see Ryan continuing to walk down the street and disappear. And then I woke up, I didn't go to bed last night. That's a whole nother story. So we want to talk about grief, kind of all over the place. This is a really emotional weekend for me because on Saturday, at 1:57 a.m., my mom will have earned her wings 10 years ago. So it's a really emotional week coming up for me.
Yeah.
But it really broke my heart when I got the AP alert that Ryan was found dead in the river. And what I don't understand is why the officer let him continue to do that, didn't call in a wellness check, follow him, or say, hey, man, can I give you a ride to the hotel? He just let him walk. As a police officer, it bothered me. And then I think, how did he end up at the river, which was 3 miles away? And then what was so strange, you guys, and we got to pray for his parents because this is a really sad story. His debit card was laying on the side of the riverbank. That was it.
Yeah.
No phone. So I think, I'm a little detective, I think that maybe someone followed him at some point. There was probably a struggle. Someone stole his wallet, left the card, and killed him. Now, here's what's fascinating about that. Because the police always say there was no foul play. We don't suspect any foul play. How do you know?
Right.
There's no video of him at the river. There's no video of him after he passed that 3rd block. We're talking about Nashville. We're talking about there's more homeless in our country. We're talking about the riverbanks of Nashville, and people are partying their brains out on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really, really sad. So I really want to just say, as we're on this podcast, Fingerprints of Greif, that story has touched my heart, and I really feel really heartbroken for his family. Another thing that happened today, we all have been wondering, the media has been absolutely relentless, and I'm in the media to some degree. But I also try to treat people as humans, but we also are in the clickbait society.
Yeah. Certainly.
TMZ and, oh, I saw Alan today. Alan looks sick. Alan doesn't even look like Alan. Oh, that's a stunt double. That wasn't Alan. That was a meme of Alan, and that was a AI of Alan. So poor Prince William, who lost Princess Diana's mother, and beautiful, beautiful Kate. The media has been hounding her relentlessly. They thought they were doing what they were doing the right way and say she was having abdominal surgery. I initially thought as a woman it was going to be a hysterectomy after 3 kids. And then she's going to be back on the public circuit in April. Well, then once you leave the podcast and learn about all the stories going around, it broke today that she has cancer.
Yeah.
And I lost my mom on March 29th to cancer at the age of 61. But I can't imagine, let me tell you, and then I'm going to introduce Alan and we're going to talk about him. The one thing about grief, you guys, is that when the years go by and we never want to say goodbye.
Yeah.
It's never long enough. But I am sitting here today and can feel grateful and gratitude because I had my mother through my formative years till I was 47 years old. I have friends, Prince William, Prince Harry. She was tragically killed. They wake up, she's gone forever. I have a friend that lost her mom when she was 4. I have another friend that lost her mom when she was 10. I can't imagine who I would be right now sitting in front of you if I lost my mom that young. And so the blessing for me, and I want to encourage people that are listening, none of us get out of here without pain, and none of us get out of here without loss, and nobody gets out of here, not any of us can script our lives. Ryan's parents didn't wake up today to the news at 4 a.m. They weren't expecting that he was going to be found dead in the river. Prince William and them have probably been trying to imagine this overwhelming hurricane that was coming at them. How do you manage it? None of us could understand that kind of deal. But for me, I had my mom for 47 years. And then people that know me know I lost my dad a year ago. My dad was just turned 76. I have a friend that lost his dad to murder at 19. So what I want to encourage everybody, and we're going to go into Alan and I'm going to quit talking, is that it's really important that when you're going through the high and low tides of grief, that there are no rules. That's why we come here every week. We talk about it real, and we're all going to have the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Right? So what I can do is go to bed at night going, I had my mom for 47 years, not long enough. I had my dad for 75 years, and I was blessed. And I know where they are, and I know I'm going to see them again for my faith. And there's a lot of people that are hurting way worse than that. So as you get older, as the time span, and 10 years for me Saturday, I don't cry. I don't cry like I used to. I cried last night. I cried a little bit last week, but mostly I smile and feel love. Tremendous amount of love for my parents, and blessed for that. But for other people, I don't want people to feel, as we transition to Alan and what he's doing for his career and where he's been, and we're going to talk about his story that is really, really fascinating. And to be sitting here today to like this remarkable man sitting to my right, when you hear his story, you wouldn't look at him today and think that's his story. Right? So the lesson is we all have stories. We're all chapters. We all have the ability to get up tomorrow morning and turn the page and write a new chapter. We don't have to stay in what you're about to talk about in this stuck generational curses, or my mom or dad abused me. Each person has the power to get the therapy and come see Alan. We'll talk about that. And change the trajectory of their life.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about you. And I want to talk about your journey in California, in Southern California, and just start telling us from when you were growing up and how we get to where we are today.
Yeah, where to start? I mean, there's a lot of things I could touch on, too, from the clinical perspective.
We'll probably do a part 2 with you, too, because I think it'll be important, especially Easter's coming. Yeah. There's a lot of holidays are very difficult for us. Oh,
absolutely. That's, holidays are when I get most of my intakes in my clinical practice.
Yeah, well, it's a horrible time. Christmas, the worst. Yeah. New Year's Eve, but Christmas.
Yeah, the first week of the year, my phone is horrific. Blowing up.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Easter, Easter, a lot of people, and I want to say this, and I'm not going to interrupt you again, but, I don't judge anybody for their faith. So I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ, but I have friends that are Jewish. I have friends that are agnostic. I have friends that are gay. I'm not going to judge anybody because that's a personal experience. Yeah. So I didn't want to set this podcast up, even though I talk about my faith. You don't have to have faith, right? Like you think whatever your higher power is. I mean, it's for me not to judge. Yeah,
there's a concept I operate with in my clinical practice that whatever it is that you're coming to in the place of your pain, the problem was always a lack of power. Right. Yeah. We as humans are powerless, right. And they talk about that a lot in 12-step recovery. It's like if the problem is a lack of power, the solution is a power greater than myself. And how, I kind of operate that in my clinical practice of like, however you define that, as long as it's not you,
Right.
And,
that's really important.
Yeah. People find a lot of peace in that when they embrace it, the lack of control.
And I think the way you just explained that is a little counterintuitive to your Al-Anon steps a little bit. Well, I've been to a couple Al-Anon meetings through my brother's brain injury and some addiction, but I think the first step is admitting that your powerlessness
over alcohol specifically,
right?
Even as just the friend or family member of the alcoholic,
right? Yeah. And same thing for me with my brother who has a brain injury. I'm powerless over his bipolar things. I'm powerless over watching the chemical deterioration of the brain damage, right? So we think we want to fix it.
Yeah.
So I think it's just as important, and I'll ask you a question in a minute about the family, because it's not our job to fix.
Right.
And sometimes you can't fix.
No, I would argue
we'll go
that
crazy
you never can.
Trying to fix.
Yeah.
He has to have free will of choice, and you have to sometimes let go. And my mom was great at that.
Yeah.
She'd go to bed, and he'd be missing.
Yeah.
And I'd get mad. And I'd say, "How are you going to bed?"
Right.
She's like, "Because nothing's going to happen between midnight and 7, and I'm giving it to God, and I'm going to bed."
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't understand that for many years.
Right.
Yeah. I was out looking. Yeah.
It's kind of like that story of the young gentleman Ryan. It's there's not much. I work with a lot of young dudes who are struggling with substances, as well as family members of those who struggle with substances. But I also work with cops, and I thought it was really interesting question because they even bring up, they don't get enough training for like the real world practical problems of substance use. And we're in an epidemic in our society. We're approaching, since the year 2010, we're approaching the 1 million people mark that have died of overdose to heroin. And it's like, when you look at it from a bird's eye view, that may not sound like a lot when you hear it, but it's astronomical.
It's a lot. Well, let's talk about the fentanyl.
Yeah, and that's a huge
pill.
reason. It's a huge
one
reason.
pill. And I have a question for you that. So let's go back to Southern California.
Yeah.
You're an athlete. And what part of Southern California? I
was born and raised in an area in Southern California called the High Desert. It's like Victorville, Apple Valley, Hesperia. I was born and raised at a hospital called St. Mary's Hospital in Apple Valley. Grew up not too far from there. Spent my whole life in the Tri-City area there, and got into a lot of trouble there. Made a lot of friends there. So when
you were playing baseball, so we're going to transition trouble, but so you played baseball because you were very, very, very talented.
Yeah, very
not to
talented. Toot my own horn, but I was good at the game, and it opened a lot of doors for me.
Right. So how old were you when you realized I'm really good at this? And
when I had a conscious awareness that I was really good at it, it was probably like 10 or 11.
Okay.
I loved the sport. I played since I was 4, so as soon as I could pick up a baseball, that was it.
You were Tiger with the golf club, but with the baseball bat and the baseball, right? And the glove. That's cool.
Yeah. And
so
that was it for me.
Then you're 11 years old, and tell us about your family life.
Yeah. So, I come from a long line of alcoholics.
Okay.
Even to the standpoint of one side of the family never identified it, and the other side of the family, you couldn't help but identify it, you know? And then those two families came together and merged through my mom and dad. And,
you got a little crazies on both sides in different ways, right?
Yeah.
And then your wife, it's just your mom and dad.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I saw this thing today. I kind of keep tabs on a bunch of different mental health concepts, just in my work week. And, it was saying the generational pain. At some point, someone has to feel it, and I was talking with a client today in my clinical practice, and we were kind of talking about that from the standpoint of, just because we can't pinpoint it, let's say 3-4 generations
doesn't mean
ago,
you don't feel it.
yeah, it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
And infect you.
Right. It's like, why else?
Unconsciously.
Exactly. Why else were people abusing
Because you're
substances?
also 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's things that are going on probably around you.
Yeah.
And I only say this because God rest my mom and stuff, but my mom was abused sexually. And I did not know until I was 18 when I called her the B word.
Yeah.
And she grabbed my little arm and sat me down and said, "Oh, yeah, let me tell you a little story." And all my friends for years was like, "Your mom is mean." She wasn't mean to me, but my mom was not nurturing to me or my brother. And that was tough. So what did I become? Type A, codependent, enabler, 5-year-old mom. Okay? 5 years old mom. Through therapy and all, and when my mom was on her deathbed, we had amazing talks about this. She didn't know what she didn't know. Yeah,
they have their limitations, and that's what I'm sure we'll get into. But I'm in a 12-step program. I won't identify too much just for the anonymity purposes. But what I've learned through my 12-step recovery journey is, my parents aren't perfect people. They have their limitations, but they're not monsters.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's at the end of the day, they're people.
Yeah.
They didn't know what they didn't know, right?
Right.
They just did the best they could.
Yeah.
And to raise you to have food on the table and clean clothes and have a bed and a roof over your head.
Yeah.
You can't blame.
Yeah.
They did the best they could. My mom was a lioness. Like, she was a single mom. She worked 3 jobs. I never knew that. I never wanted for food. I always had clean clothes. I had clean sheets. I had a house. Wasn't much, but we had a clean house.
Yeah.
And I wore JCPenney plain pocket jeans when all the girls in 6th grade had Gloria Vanderbilt. And I used to get really mad because I wanted Gloria Vanderbilt and that peer pressure. And my mom's like, yeah, sorry, it's the world. So you're 11, you realize you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, go into high school.
Yeah, I came into my own baseball wise, when a lot of the young kids had natural talents. I was a big kid, so I was a little bit
tall.
lanky.
How tall are you?
Yeah, I'm 6'5".
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of like that was the
Were
door.
you like the guy in the
me.
Green Mile on the baseball field with all the other kids?
Yeah, when I hit my growth spurt, so
they're like, "Oh, there's Alan. Can I hit it over Alan?" Right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
My freshman year, I made it to the last day of tryouts. My freshman year, I was 13, turning 14, and on the last day of tryouts, I got cut. And I remember thinking, like, it's over,
Oh, why'd you get cut? Because do you feel like it was your size?
Well,
Did you intimidate the coach?
Well, I hadn't hit my growth spurt yet my freshman year, and I was still young, and I also, at that time, so what would develop in my baseball career is I became a pitcher. At that time, I was not trying out as a pitcher. I was a third baseman at the time, and I was an average. Okay.
I
could hit, but...
But how old were you, 13?
Yeah, I was about to turn 14.
But you were crushed.
Yeah. I remember reading the list the locker room.
That and just crushed.
Yeah, I mean, all my friends that I played Little League with my whole life, they're all on the team.
That didn't make it?
Yeah, out of the group of like the core guys I played with my whole life, and
that's hard. And you're 13. You're going through puberty.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So how did you who helped you through that, knowing that you weren't developed yet and then to become a pitcher? Because that's a lot on a 13-year-old boy.
Yeah, what's interesting is the high school baseball coach at that school, he had left the year I was coming in my freshman year, and I used to do private baseball lessons with him growing up. Okay. And so he had gone to the junior college to coach there, and he called me and he said, "Hey, it's not over. Just, go get into Little League." And my dad,
he coached you.
Yeah, and then my dad was really supportive. He took me out that night, and we went down to the field that was around the corner, and just we did some practicing.
That's amazing. So they recognize now it's a teaching opportunity, and we can coach him and mentor him to show him this is not the end.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I owe a lot to with all the things that I've given my dad a hard time about. I mean, that guy supported my baseball career like nobody else.
Well, I'm sure he was proud of you.
Yeah, he really was.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
So, so this coach takes you under his wing.
Yeah, he had already coached me all through middle school, and he was going on to a new venture at the junior college, and so he was, at that point hands off, but was in touch, and so I took his words to heart. He said, "Look, just go back, get into Little League, have another year of playing ball, and come back your sophomore year and pretend like it didn't happen." And that's what I did.
A wise man. Yeah, and you took that as word.
Yeah. So I, in between those years, I aged. I hit a growth spurt. I grew so fast that I tore my oblique.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so there was a lot of growing pains. I got water on the knees too. Like when you grow that fast.
I mean, you're I'm much older than you, but it reminds me of kind of like the Jolly Green Giant, right? Or Jack and the Beanstalk. He grew so fast.
Yeah.
That your body probably couldn't keep up.
Right.
That was hard, huh?
Yeah, it was rough. But it changed my baseball career because I came back my sophomore year and I tried out as a pitcher. And I got on the mound, and the moment I got on the mound, they were like, after I threw a few pitches, they were like, "Hey, why don't you come over and practice with the varsity team?" And that was it. That was all she wrote.
So how old were you then?
I was about to turn 15.
Okay, so let's talk about as we went, because we know where we're going on your bio, the audience doesn't. So walk us through 15, what happens? Yeah,
so I started hanging out with a pretty rough crowd. The kind of guys were like, I took a turn my freshman year where I was doing the Little League stuff, but I also started hanging out with a much rougher crowd of dudes.
Because you're with varsity.
Well, so that the freshman year before my sophomore year was, I was in high school. I started hanging out with dudes that were older while guys were at baseball practice. I was, until Little League started up, I was doing questionable things. And
was that peer pressure? Or
certainly.
And was it loneliness?
Yeah, I wanted
to
fit in somewhere. Yeah, and I had fit in on a baseball field my whole life.
And you didn't have anywhere to fit in that.
Yeah, and I fought a little bit too much when I was early in high school, just being a bigger kid. And you go to high school, you got some older guys, they want to test their testosterone.
Yeah, of course, the bully and you got. Did you guys have back then like we did? We had kind of had the jocks, that whole kind of cliquish.
Yeah. And so I settled in with a crowd that, remained some of them are still my best friends to this day.
Good.
Yeah, have really put their lives together, phenomenal men. And, but they were the dudes that my baseball teammates were afraid of. And it worked. Well, it worked out in this way. As my older brother, I went to high school with as well, but my older brother's gay, so he got picked on a lot.
Oh, yeah. And so did you protect him?
Yeah. So there's one thing I can say is like him and I can rag on each other, but if anybody else called my brother gay,
you're going to deal with Alan.
Yeah. And I had a bit of a temper back then. I mean, I was growing up in an untreated alcoholic home, mostly Al-Anonic issues because my parents didn't use substances, but it was untreated. So a little chaotic. It was very loud in my home. Yeah, a lot of anger.
Slamming.
So I took it out on people who picked on my brother, and I was good at it.
Yeah, I bet you were. Did you get suspended?
Oh, yeah. I almost got expelled my freshman year at the end of the year, and that kind of woke me up a little bit. But as high school progressed, I was, getting really good at baseball. People were starting to take notice. But my sophomore year after I made the team, I was pretty much instantly on the team. Tryouts were going on, but I wasn't at tryouts anymore. I was practicing. And then the first grades came through for the check, and I was on the cusp of a 2.0. And my math teacher, this is another funny side note, was going to fail me. And my dad came into the class, to talk with her and said, fail him so he learns a lesson.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so she did?
so she looked at me the next day when I came into school. She said, the only reason I'm giving you a D- is because your dad was holding you accountable. And I ended up getting like a B in that class because I was like, well, you know, he can't. So the agreement was if she was going to give me a D- that my dad had to come into the class 3 times and sit in the back of the class while my classmates were in there.
Did he?
And he did.
Wow.
It's the most embarrassing thing. But I look back and.
But your dad knew, like,
oh, yeah.
you do this is there's a consequence to your actions, and okay, keep going, because I have another question later, and we're going to be doing part 2 with that one, so keep going. So you're hanging out with this bad crowd. Yeah,
you know, not the worst dudes, but their older brothers were pretty rough. And
was it a lot of drinking and drugs, or just pushing the needle?
Yeah, pushing the needle. It was a lot of alcohol. My best friend in high school, his name's Andrew. He, you know, would turn out he was a pretty vicious alcoholic and like really balls to the walls.
How old?
He was a year older than me, so when he really started drinking, he was probably like 14 and a half, 15.
But that is so crazy.
Yeah.
That you have a vicious alcoholic at the age of 14 or 15. Yeah. Now, did he have a troubled home?
Oh, yeah, very. He's adopted, very, you know.
So there was something else going on, and that was an escapism, which we know in brain injury medications, even with my brother, and he knows that we talk about this, is that they want to medicate.
Yeah.
And that is alcohol.
Right.
And my brother, unfortunately, when he would have half a beer with 47% of a front left brain gone, half a beer would equal 25 out of his mind.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't, it was bad.
Yeah.
Like bad. So that kid, 14, 15, vicious alcoholic, that's a major, that's sad.
Oh, it was an issue, and I think we all knew it was an issue, but we didn't know what to do about it.
Because you're kids.
Well, yeah, it's like that's where my Al-Anonic issues, you know, first really started to present themselves, where I could kind of see them. I would try to help fix and save all my friends. I was that friend in the group.
Oh, that would have been me. You were the codependent trying to save them and help them. And then you struggled inside.
Yeah.
So you were sober.
Yeah, I very rarely. There was a couple times, like I remember the first time I drank to blackout, I was 13, and I knew it was just a massive problem.
You didn't like it?
No, I hated it. Hated it.
So you didn't have an alcohol issue?
No, I've never had an unmanageable.
You had an anger issue?
Yeah. I had a control issue. I wanted to control my friends.
Okay.
They would get out of control, and I'd be the ringleader.
And the 6'5" giant's I'm gonna control you.
Yeah.
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 So let's keep going, because you were getting in trouble.
Yeah.
With the law.
Yeah. So then my senior year rolls around, and with that group of guys, we got arrested, probably, you know, like detained, you know, for minor vandalism stuff a couple times. And then one night, I decided I was going to hang out with kind of like my really rough friends that have a lot of problems going on.
Yeah, keep going, Alan.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah. We got to. We're live, people. We're live radio. Go ahead. Podcast. So, I was like,
I remember my best friend Jerry. We talk about this every now and then. He was hanging out with my best friend Cody, who two of just the most phenomenal dudes who've really put their lives together from where we came from. But they called me that night, and I decided, hey, I'm going to go hang out with these other guys that I know, and they told me straight up, they're like, why? You know, they're skid marks. What are you doing? You know, and I was like, you know, I've been hanging out with you guys a lot lately. I haven't seen them in a while, and so.
But they had they knew that this is not good for Alan.
Right. Yeah, especially Jerry. He's a year older than me, so our senior year I was 17, he was 18. He's always been wise. You know, I mean, he made a lot of his own mistakes too, but he was kind of the friend I looked up to.
And he also realized he couldn't control you.
Yeah.
So he could give you words of wisdom, and he would say, hey man, can you stay?
Yeah.
He probably felt helpless too, because he's like, I want him. Why won't he listen to me?
Right.
So what happened?
So these other guys were pretty manipulative in nature, and I knew that about them. I'd known them since middle school, that kind of stuff. But we went out, and we had this hangout spot behind a church. It was a Mormon church in my hometown, and we got plastered drunk. And one of them was like, I bet you can't hit the window, the big stained glass window on the side of the church. And we're already throwing rocks. At this point, I wasn't keeping track. I was drunk, and I was like, I bet you I can. And as soon as the rock left my hand, I knew I screwed up.
Uh-oh.
I mean, the one thing
you're a pitcher.
Yeah, well,
you're 6'5". You're a big dude. Like, you have a powerful arm.
Yeah, and my aim. That's the one thing that carried me through my baseball career. Is like I just threw strikes. Yeah, I had impeccable.
American sniper.
Yeah. And,
so did it shatter the whole window?
It hit the top middle of the window, and the whole thing came shattering down. And there was people in the church, and I remember seeing their face. And they were already all on the phone because, like,
they were in the church.
Yeah, they were in the church. There was probably like 10 or 15 of them.
It was a weeknight or
I can't even remember.
Like a Wednesday night, maybe. People were in the church, so it fell on them.
Yeah, it might have been a Friday night or something.
It fell on them?
No, not on them, just in front of them.
Okay. Oh yeah, they're calling the police.
They had already been calling the police because apparently we had done damage to the cars by throwing rocks over there.
Oh no.
Because it's all a bit of a blur, but as soon as the window.
How old were you at this point?
I had just turned 17.
Okay, so you knew you're in big trouble.
Yeah. And like not even 10 seconds later, the blue and red lights, are coming around the corner.
So you get arrested.
Yeah, so we booked it, and we went to try and hide in this apartment complex, and we went into an abandoned apartment, and they caught us right away. And so the charges were public intoxication, vandalism, and breaking and entering. And we were arrested, and
handcuffs behind your back in the back of the police
face
car,
in the concrete,
fingerprint,
so the whole deal. And I was the only one who was underage, so they were all 18. I was 17, and
you must have been like,
yeah. So
you were scared.
Well, yeah, I got detained separate from them in the drunk tank, like in the main police station.
Underage,
yeah. And when we went to court, I remember the judge. He's like, look, I need you to be plain honest with me. What happened? And I just told him. I told him the best of my recollection, and I was just honest. And all the others had blamed it on me.
So here you go, because it's like, so you learned that lesson too. Like they weren't your friends.
Yeah, they apparently
saved their own butts.
Yeah, when they were locked up the night before, they were like, we'll put it on the 17-year-old and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Which,
but you were honest with the judge.
Yeah,
I bet the judge sniffed that real quick.
Straight up, yeah. He was like, he said, look,
this kid's being honest. These guys are hoodlums.
Yeah, and I had been in front of that judge before, twice.
But I bet that judge knew that you were a good kid underneath that.
Yeah, he looked at me, he said, look, young man, if you remain this honest in your life, you're going to be okay. And
that is good.
Yeah, he was a good guy. And my dad was pissed, but he got over it, and and so did I. But yeah, there was restitution, community service, you name it. But the biggest hit was I had some college opportunities for baseball that completely fell through.
Because of that?
Yeah. So I was supposed to go to some tryouts in Southern California, and I was in touch with a coach out of the state.
You were 17.
It was my senior year of high school.
Wasn't a felony, was it?
No, it was a misdemeanor.
So why would...
They didn't want anything to do with someone that's getting in trouble with the law.
Boy, that's changed in the MLB, NFL, and all that today.
It's
especially in the
interesting,
NFL.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, let's look at some of these guys that beat the crap out of their girlfriends 17 times and they still play again.
Yeah, I'll put it.
That makes me mad.
Well, there might have been a time, and at that time I was. But as I look back, I put it like this.
They didn't want to take that risk.
Well, they didn't, and I see God's hand in my life. I needed to be held accountable.
You needed to be held back.
Yeah, because I was in and out, of getting kicked out of my house. I was too much at that time. I was 6'5", had no concept of how big I was either. I was getting in trouble in ways that I didn't understand, and I was putting my family in harm's way.
So your brother at the time, how did that impact him?
Well, my brother has had an unmanageable problem with substances since he was probably 13. I remember when we were kids, I used to find the empty beer bottles in his closet, and
but he was also dealing with who he was. Trying to understand that from a puberty, growing up.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's one of the most challenging relationships. I haven't talked to my brother or shared words with him in almost 3 years.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. My sister's kind of in the same boat. Her and I are two peas in a pod. She's also a therapist.
Well, you guys are grounded in reality,
Yeah.
and also grounded in the tools that help you work through things.
Yeah.
He's probably it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and those years in high school, well, a lot of people thought he was my little brother. That must have been hard.
Yeah.
All the things, but I remember there were shifts in our relationship in high school where, like, you know, I'd find out from his friends he was talking crap about me, that kind of stuff, and I didn't know what to do with it. He didn't either.
Yeah.
It just was a rough time.
It was probably a protection mechanism within him to try to fit in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that he didn't love you. He just was trying to fit in.
Yeah. You know, my brother, the way I put it is like, one of the funniest, most gentle-hearted people, but his addiction does something to him that I can't go down that road with him.
I get you. So then what happens? You got held back. Baseball, that must have hurt.
Yeah, it was. You know, it was rough. It was almost graduation. Baseball season was pretty much over. It was time to make your decisions for college. And so one of the coaches I was supposed to try out with calls the coach who used to coach at BYU in Utah, who is now transferring to be the athletic director and baseball coach at this little junior college called Barstow Community College in the middle of nowhere.
Where was that?
It was probably like 45 minutes from my hometown.
Still in California.
Yeah, in the middle of the desert. Like, it's the way I described it is it's like in the middle of nowhere on your way to Vegas from like LA, you know, just dirt, you know, meth labs and dirt.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. And then a little junior college.
Is that where you went?
Yeah. So he called me. So he called me and he said,
I love it.
Nobody.
You're like, okay, God, what's this? You know, look, God, he's going to put me in the middle of nowhere in a monastery almost in the middle of nowhere with tumbleweeds on your way to Vegas.
Right.
That's hilarious.
And he was the best coach for me at the time. I mean, he said, look, man, you're a hell of a ball player, but you're an idiot. Was kind of the conversation. Yeah. And when I came in, I mean, I kid you not, I was probably the only one in the fall who could even play catch. You know, it was not a good baseball team, and he was turning it around. And
dreams.
Yeah, and he told me straight up when I came in, he said, here's how this is going to go. You're going to sit in the front row of all of your classes, and I'll make sure that you are. You'll go to the study groups, and you will not play for me until I trust you. You'll sit on the bench, and you'll cheer your teammates on. Yeah, and he stuck to that. I mean, we would get our ass kicked, and like all the dudes that I had like started getting close with, they'd be like, just put him in. He's, you know, he can play, and he wouldn't do it.
Good for him.
Yeah, he was
stuck to his principles.
Yeah,
at the cost of losing.
Yeah, and
because
we lost.
But he knew the bigger lesson.
Yeah, he knew that if I could put my head on straight, that I could help him be a solid part of the team.
So here we go. When does the baseball team start turning around because you start buying in, and then they go put him in, coach, and then I bet you blew it up.
Yeah. So his whole MO was, you change for college. College doesn't change for you. And I kid you not, I'd have an 8 a.m. class. I'd look up in the little window in the door, and his little face is right there.
Good for him.
He was just a phenomenal man.
Do you still talk to him?
Oh yeah, Coach Mike Carpel. Yeah.
Coach Mike, we love you, Coach
Mike. Oh, I love
Mike.
him to death. He's a great man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So then he puts you in.
Yeah. So it gets into the regular season. We lose our first game. Second game comes around. I'm cheering on teammates. We're losing. He looks down the bench and says, "You're in." And
and the team's going, yes.
Yeah. And we ended up winning the game. And
and then you start winning.
Yeah, so I became what we call our ace there for the 2 years I was there. I led study groups, so I became basically our team captain. That was, you know, how Coach referred to me.
I love it.
Yeah.
So speech communications.
Yeah. So
because I find this fascinating that, you know, we go back to the beginning when you're like, I wasn't sure, you know, what I was going to do. So I think for anyone listening that either has an addiction, and a lot of times in grief, you know, I say, like, there are no rules, but if you get to a point where you're staring down shopping addiction, sex addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, it's time to get help.
Oh yeah.
So that coach was pivotal in your life.
Yeah, I think if a few of those things, like with the judge or, getting arrested, some of those coaches not taking a chance, this coach showing up when he did, I think if some of those things hadn't turned out, I would have turned to other distractions 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think there's a great book. I'll have to get you one when we do your part 2, called When God Winks.
Oh, okay.
And it was written by Squire Rushnell, and he talks about the power of coincidence, but there really are no coincidences.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the movie Sliding Doors.
Yeah.
I leave this studio and I see a piece of trash in the middle of the hallway. I can stop and pick it up and do the right thing and throw it away, or I just keep walking.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be a cause and effect of that, right?
Yeah.
Or I missed the train. Sliding Doors, Gwyneth Paltrow. She missed the train. Her life went this way because she missed the train. She got on the train.
Right.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So speech communications, and then you got your master's in science of clinical psychology. How did you settle on that? Did you say, I want to help people?
So what ended up happening after so that was junior college. I played 2 years there, and then I transferred to the University of Laverne, which is a small private school.
Got to play baseball.
Yeah, and they're consistently ranked in the top 15 in the U.S. for Division III. The coach there, Coach Scott Winterburn, he's in the Hall of Fame for NCAA.
That's amazing.
He's a wonderful, wonderful coach.
So
I mean,
your
best
trajectory
baseball
is I
coach.
want to go pro.
It was at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, as I got older, I realized, you start climbing the ranks, and I was good, like really good.
Yeah.
But you get into those levels and you realize, like, now you're starting to talk about the best in the world.
Right, because you're getting the Dominican Republic,
Yeah.
you're getting, around the world, and
Yeah.
people are going and plucking them and bringing them over.
Yeah. And then I had an incident, which wouldn't have been a bearing whether or not I was going to go pro, but I had an incident between my sophomore and junior year when I was transferring where I tore the humeral head of my bicep tendon, a micro tear.
Oh, yeah, that's not good in baseball as a pitcher.
Yeah, and I never threw as hard again.
Yeah.
In fact, like before I told anyone I was injured, I came in as a transfer, and they would joke at how slow I was throwing because I was hiding an injury at first, and my coach knew it right away because he had saw me play. So he's like, "What is wrong?"
And you know,
yeah.
So
and
you played
so
for 2 years there, but then the clinical when did you decide the clinical psychology and then starting to get into the therapy realm?
Yeah, so when I graduated my undergrad, realizing like baseball's done, I had some pivotal experiences at Laverne with not just public speaking, but I was a president of the student athlete advisory committee. So
Good.
yeah, so I was really used
You're
to
really
like
growing up here.
Yeah,
is what you're doing.
yeah,
and
like
you're making
leaps
the
and
right
bounds.
choices, and you have a trajectory and you have a path, and you're starting to see these things come together. That if I follow this path, like things are happening for the good, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
And I kind of settled into a role where I was the guy that people trusted off the field. It just my whole college career was mired with that.
I love it.
Yeah, I was that teammate that people liked.
Yeah.
And I really found my identity in that aspect of my life off the baseball field for the first time.
Well, and I think in listening to the beginning of your story, and you wanted to be the friend to fix your friends. In that transition, I almost feel like, outsider looking in, that God took those puzzle pieces that you didn't know how they fit, and used your strength and your height and your as kind of like a team dad in a way. Like something happened, I want to go talk to Alan, so you became the leader of the team. Yeah,
in that very specific way, and we had
that made you feel good though.
Yeah, it was. We had a really good senior class, just some of the most wonderful dudes, and we were all leaders in our own right.
And you still stay in touch with a lot of those guys?
Yeah, well, we won a championship together that year.
Okay, well, there you go. Let's go.
Yeah,
nice.
Cherry on the cake, yeah.
With that coach?
Yeah, with Scott Winterburn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and he's won many championships, but it was interesting because we weren't like we were a ragtag group of dudes, but we very much filled roles, and that's why we won.
But so because we're doing a part 2, that is so cool because when you think of Hoosiers and you think of what's the football movie? Denzel Washington.
Oh, I remember the Titans.
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
a good
listen. Same thing. And then I don't know if you saw the basketball documentary about the University of El Paso, the white versus the black, right?
Yeah.
That coach knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
At the expense of the kids didn't know it. He saw the strategic vision of the puzzle pieces. You guys, it came together.
It did. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and being a part of a lot of those things is what I've looked back and that informed a lot of becoming a clinician. But I didn't grow up wanting to be a therapist. I had never thought about it.
Right.
I didn't even study psychology in my undergrad. So I remember in the interview process, I asked them. I said, "Is this where you like sit across from people and ask them how they're feeling?" And they got the biggest kick out of that. Years later, when I graduated my master's program,
is this where I have a couch and I come in and tell me how you feel and kick the feet up, and you've got your notepad over there, like in I forget which HBO show it was with the therapist, but anyway,
yeah, I did an exit dinner.
How are you feeling?
Right.
How are you feeling today?
Yeah,
I feel like shit, dude.
Yeah. So 3 years later, when I'm graduating the program, I do an exit dinner with like the chair of the program and a few of the others who had interviewed me back then, and they said, we just wanted to see what a young athlete coming fresh out of a sport would do in this field. We just were interested, and it ended up
cool.
it ended up. Well, it has. It was my first career. Will be my only career. I love it to death. I am beyond blessed to be a therapist and to have been a therapist in some of the times that have happened recently.
Oh my gosh.
My goodness. I mean, what a godsend. I often talk with other therapists that came in when I did of like what a blessing it was to be not just a therapist, but like I was also a seasoned therapist at the time when COVID hit.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
So I can't wait. So tell everybody real quick, because this is what we're going to do. We have 4 minutes.
We've been flying.
But I love it. But if you will, I know next Friday is Good Friday. Are you doing your show?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to come in for part 2?
Let's do part 2.
Okay.
And I think it'll be good for me because I think with it being a holiday, God's timing is always perfect.
Yeah.
And that next morning will be the 10-year anniversary of my mother, so you can help me a little bit.
Right.
But I think it'll be fun to go into part 2, especially talking more about you work with veterans, you work with addicts. I just think it's so inspirational, and I think for anyone listening, like I'm so inspired. Thank you for lifting me out of kind of the pit today with Leo Ryan, and
thanks for having me here.
Just made me sad today, and I didn't get any sleep because I was working up like a zombie. But I'm so excited about like you use in your journey of recovery called transformative.
Yeah.
That's a really important word. Yeah. And I want to pick that up next week, but transformative. So this interview has helped transform my attitude of how I felt today.
I'm glad to hear that.
Down and sad because I'm an empath. And I still cry over the Uvalde kids.
Yeah.
It's hard for me. Like I feel helpless in that situation. So the fact that next week I want to talk about, because then COVID happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wow. Abuse increased.
Oh my gosh.
Sexual trafficking increased. Prostitution increased. Domestic violence increased.
Yeah.
Drug abuse increased. Alcoholism increased. I mean, it was a hard time.
Yeah. I was working in treatment at the time, and the anxiety levels, and just to be in a balanced place to help people stay grounded during a time where none of us knew what was going on.
Did you do Zoom therapy sessions?
We did.
Okay.
I also kind of around that time started my private practice. Okay. So I had some private clients that I saw in person and some I saw on Zoom. And then every now and then we'd run group on Zoom depending on what the regulations were. But yeah.
That's amazing. So we have 2 minutes. Tell us how do we find you on social?
Yeah.
And I want to encourage everybody. So we're live, and then Alan takes an hour break, and then you come on at 7 to 8.
Yeah.
Live, breaking the cycle.
Here
on Fishbowl Radio Network. So you can come back on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then, but how do people find you?
Yeah. So if you want to find me, you can find me at alanheide.com. Just AlanHeide.com. All my socials are my first and last name. Instagram has my middle initial, so it's Alan D Hyde. And I'm on Instagram, and then I upload all my Breaking the Cycle episodes to YouTube, and that's just at Breaking the Cycle podcast if you type it in on YouTube, and I do other content under that guys on YouTube as well.
I love it. So this is great. So I knew we were going to do a part 2, and it worked out wonderfully because I think going into Easter season, such a dark place on Good Friday for the country and the world at that time, and then hope and inspiration, and nobody better. Like God totally knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
and your dad, like, and your coaches.
Yeah, a lot of good men.
Yeah, a lot of good men, which we need that in society today.
We talk about that on the show as well, you know, because we're in a society today where people are so at odds, you know, oh, bad women, bad men. It's like there are good people out there, and there's always been people out there.
I want to believe there's more good than bad.
Yeah,
but
you know,
social media, we'll talk about next week, really can wreck you.
Yeah.
You have to limit your consumption.
Oh, I tell my clients all the time.
Yeah,
I
it'll wreck me. Like I can't. It'll wreck me because I feel everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I can't sleep.
Yeah.
Guys, okay, so part 2, Good Friday, at 5:00. We'll be here live, back with Alan. This is amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a blast. So part 2. So we are live on Fishbowl Radio Network on the Facebook page. I will be uploading this, and then I'm really excited to announce. I know we got to wrap, but I'm really excited to announce that Fingerprints of Greif is going to be in the next 3 weeks on DB Television Streaming Network 24/7. We'll also have the shows on demand. So after they're on Fishbowl and they go on Spotify and Google Play, then we'll upload Alan's episode. It'll be seen on Google, Samsung, LG, Amazon Fire, Roku, and several cable channels. So it'll be really fun. So I'm excited about that. Thank you to our illustrious producer. We have a beautiful day. So as you see the clouds coming through, it's really pretty how we started. So thank you for lifting my mood. We'll be here next Friday at 5, and then tune in tonight at 7 to Breaking the Cycle with Alan. And on YouTube, on your Facebook, if you have questions, just answer. And if you have questions for Alan this week, send them my way, DM me, send me a text, and we'll bring you on to the show next week.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.